Welcome back, my unapologetic peeps. We are officially here with episode 10, The Earth in Deep Freeze. Just really going over the Earth's ice ages and the climate that has shaped our humanity. Most of us are only familiar with the biggest ice age, so I really wanted to paint the picture that we actually go through stages, our Earth, and there's been multiple ice ages, and we're actually in one of the warmest climates for our Earth's age. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So just to really paint the picture, I want us to imagine this world as it is, okay? So I am picking on the US, that is where I am located. On the left-hand side here, we see the Chicago region with all the wonderful Great Lakes and what that would look like if we were to keep on the Earth's ice age trend. We would be seeing Chicago buried 2 miles thick of ice. That is quite hard to imagine, but it is true. If we were following cycles like normal, this is kind of what that area would look like. And then a little bit of a myth to debunk here is that because of our wonderful ice ages, Florida's land mass has actually doubled its current size. We see the expansion there now that might be working in reverse. There is some folklore that Florida might be losing some of its land mass now, and as a Floridian, especially on this Gulf Coast, that hits true to home as that's where I'm located. So definitely interesting to dive deep on some of the coastal regions, but just wanted to paint that picture. And then for my UK friends, we do have a case study where if we were following these Icelandic trends, that Britain would actually be connected to mainland Europe. Just kind of interesting to see this at this perspective. Let's keep moving. So, as we know, climate is never static. It is driven by deep time forces. It's not something that happens overnight, even though we might feel some of those pressures and results from some of these forces, like hurricanes and typhoons and some of those bigger storms that we see, especially in Florida. It gets hotter every single year. Our storms get more violent every single year. We're actually experiencing a tropical depression right now that feels like a category 2 hurricane. So it definitely impacts us depending on where you are. But some of these forces that we see, of course, are the tectonic plates shifting our continents. More plate activity is found in different regions of the world. Volcanic eruptions are atmospheric chemistry, which of course does change with human impact, and then our shifting ocean currents as well. Let's keep diving deeper into this issue. So let's really hone in on this term, ice age. And what it means is there's a permanent ice existing at both poles. It does not mean that the entire planet is frozen, but we do have ice on both poles, which we do now. There is no magic ice wall. The Earth is round. Don't even get me started with the flat earthers, but this is the world as we know it. We are actually, though, in an ice age right now. We are in an ice age that is categorized as a warm interglacial period, which is why I talk about it being so warm, because if we were following the trends of our Earth, we'd have a lot more ice on the planet. And curious to see how human impact, human intervention with our growing population has kind of tilted the Earth off of its normal trajectory, our normal ice age periods that we see throughout antiquity. Now, again, just painting the picture, as I stated before, there's not just one giant ice age. The Earth goes through periods, and so we have historically some different ice ages throughout the Earth's time. And I just wanted to really paint that timeline for you here. So we have our oldest known freeze, we have the snowball version of our Earth, where the Earth was almost entirely frozen. Notice I said almost. We have our shift for early marine life. And then we have our late Paleozoic period massive polar ice caps that we still have today. And then our current ice age that we're in right now. We still have those polar caps, but there's not as much ice on the poles. We do have tons of evidence of that shrinking, which is not necessarily a good thing. We're further altering this natural pattern that the Earth has. So let's talk a little bit about this ice age timeline and the world that we know as far as humanity and the world that we as humans inherited. So we do see the Paleocenic epoch from, I don't know, about 2.5 million years ago to 11 thousand years ago. We see lots of megafauna neighbors, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, lots of mammal life happening during this period. What caused this? Why does this happen? Why are we in such a trend with our ice ages? Well, we have a few things happening here. We have our Earth's stretched orbit, the angle that the Earth actually spins on its axis. And then, of course, the planet wobbles like a top. We're not in a true circular orbit. We do have that more spherical rotation to us. The result is that we have changing sunlight that drives a long-term climate, which therefore produces a wonderful place for all of our life to have bred and then for taken off and expanded. Now, as many of you, I'm sure, who have experienced harsh and horrible winters, depending on where you're located, this was not a wonderful time and place to live for humanity, but it did ultimately create brilliance and strategy. So, this harsh, cold climate forced us to then master fire and shelter. We had to have a place to survive. We then had to invent and tailor clothing to keep us warm and also have a deep social cooperation with each other. You're stuck in a cave together for long, cold periods of time. We have to make sure that we are cooperating together with little violence. So it's really actually something that's helped us in our human story reach newer heights, especially when we're controlling fire. And then we see the Great Retreat. The ice then begins to melt roughly around 20,000 years ago. You see, I have some visuals here, the before versus the after. Look at how that has changed our topography and geography. We have a rise dramatically in sea levels. Glaciers then carve out the Great Lakes. Britain is severed from Europe, and the Bering Land Bridge vanishes completely beneath the waves. And that Bering Land Bridge is what connects the coast of Russia to what we know over here in Alaska and North America. So it's really starting to cut off and segregate different populations. Really interesting how ice melting can do that to a human population. Now, remember, we talked about how harsh of a time this was for our human ancestors to live through. And just imagine, I mean, you have ice sheets that are dictating migration routes, things that paths that used to be there that are no longer there or that have changed or look different. So now we have totally different resources and reasoning for migrating. We also have different sort of lands that have opened up. So now you see agricultural use more in play, different sources for us to pull from as humans. And then, of course, we go into a period of stable interglacial warmth, which allowed us to then spread and migrate across the continents, continue populating, and basically give way to the rise of civilization and city and statehood. Just some fun facts about the staggering ice age that we see. We do have 30% of land covered by ice at its peak when the world was most cold and most dense with ice. We do see a minus 300 feet of sea level. How much lower could the global sea levels possibly been, and how that impacted? Think of the Polynesian populations who were circumnavigating the Pacific Ocean and how that must have affected their culture. And then, of course, the coexistence. We have a lot of back and forth. We're humans here, we're humans not here. Humans actively hunted and lived alongside mammoths in North America. We have archaeological evidence. We have different hunting tribes, different things that we found, bone evidence, even tool use for these specific animals as well, or mammals as well. Alrighty, I know this wasn't a super long, deep diving podcast episode, but I really wanted to touch on the ice ages themselves. It is such a part of our history that is misconstrued and has so many misconceptions. So I really did want to focus in on some of those lost pieces of knowledge and really just define this as a story of human resilience. Earth has always changed. Evolution is always changing our biology. So our biology and our environment are always changing, which means our greatest strength as humans, besides being social and having our collective knowledge, is adaptation, being able to change what we're doing and how we're doing it to survive in that environment, to basically make sure that we're going to survive, to make sure that not only do we survive, but do the next generation behind us survive and thrive as well. So it's been a short podcast episode. I really wanted to cap us off here on episode 10 because we are going to be changing directions a little bit. I'm going to continue doing what I do like normal, but I want to change our topic and our theme a smidge. We're going to start having some fun and really looking at some of our modern things with an anthropological lens. So until the next time, stay curious and unapologetic, and I will see you then.